Hello, everyone. Welcome to our presentation and webinar today. We're going to be walking you through some capabilities to streamline your audit and security management processes in Microsoft Dynamics 365, finance and supply chain management. So hopefully everybody here is excited to learn about auditing and security management within your Dynamics ERP systems, because that's the topic of our conversation today. So we're going to go ahead and get started with a couple housekeeping items. So if you have any questions, there is a Q&A window within the On24 platform, which is titled Edit with Q&A. Go ahead and ask any questions you have in there. We'll be monitoring it as we go through the presentation and demonstration today. So if you have any questions, please do go ahead and feel free to ask them at the time you happen to think of them so you don't forget. And if it's something that we're going to be addressing over the course of the presentation, we'll do that, or we'll go ahead and set aside some time at the end to answer all remaining questions. If you would like closed captioning, there's a closed captioning capability, CC button at the bottom right corner of your screen, of your media player screen. As I mentioned, you got a couple different screens or windows. You got Q&A and a media, as well as a video one. So you can resize them, you can move them around. It's a pretty agile format, so that you can get the best experience or the most optimal experience according to what you wanted, what you would like. And lastly, this will be recorded. So if you can't stick around for the whole presentation, we'll go ahead and be sending this out to everybody who has registered after our webinar here today. So with that said, we'll go ahead and do a quick introduction on some of the speakers. I'm Corey Bakhtiari. I am the Senior Director of Innovation and Strategy. One of the things I do is I work on our IP as well as our pre-sales activities. And then along with me, we've got Dave Heinrich. Dave, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Hey everyone, my name is Dave Heinrich. I'm a lead consultant on the delivery and IP teams here at Argonaut. I've been with the company for about 4.5 years and in the Microsoft space for about 8. And I will be doing the product demonstration today.
Thank you, Dave. Indeed, Dave is going to be our subject matter expert here. And I will be kind of emceeing us and taking us through the first few slides before we hand it off to him. This is what we're planning on covering. We're going to talk a little bit about the business challenges that have motivated us to develop a solution that primarily tackles audit and security management gaps in Dynamics 365. We'll also go through an overview of its capabilities, including benefits. Then we'll do a feature review with a live demonstration. And then at the end, if there are any questions, we'll go ahead and address them. So some of the challenges that we have seen with just ERP and maybe Dynamics more specifically are listed here. I'll go ahead and start with the complexity of systems. So as you may well know, there are multiple ways to skin a cat. There's more than one way to go ahead and actually perform a function, right? Let's say like crediting a customer, for example. And this can make translating audit or access review requirements from a process or business concept to a technical construct somewhat difficult. Furthermore, there are different levels or hierarchies of security within Dynamics. You've got your roles, you've got your duties, you've got your privileges and entry points, menu items, table accesses as well. And when you start looking at all of these things together, it can get pretty overwhelming quite quickly. So we have a solution that will help both by delivering pre-configurations and by allowing you to get to the right access level or the right permission level to report completely and accurately in order to help reduce that complexity or that feeling of being overwhelmed. As you may know, we are dealing with 2 major updates in a calendar year, typically. And if you live in a regulated or validated environment, making sure that your security measures continue to stay in place and that you're able to report on any new entry points or security permissions in an efficient manner is going to be really important. So being able to keep up to date with the latest updates, and then being able to report as things change, something that we're going to be able to help you with here. Also, as you're sure you know, audits are time consuming, both in terms of elapsed amount of time, but also resource intensive. And with some of our capabilities, including our pre-configurations, we've seen a lot of improvement as it relates to the amount of time needed to not just execute on an audit and provide the needed information to internal or external auditors, but also preparation time for those. Advanced threats. As you may know, typically what we're talking about here is in-application security, but there could also be some components where we have capabilities, for example, around change tracking that are going to help you identify or detect other threats that you may not think of when you're only working within the in-application context. And that can be particularly challenging, especially in our SaaS-based world that we're typically living in as it relates to Dynamics 365. As I mentioned a little bit earlier, if you've got a validated or regulated environment, or if you've got other types of compliance requirements, for example, around personal information, meeting these requirements can be both time-consuming, costly, and burdensome. And our tool will help you be able to not just optimize those activities, but so that you can free up your key stakeholders or your key personnel to do other things, but you can also improve trust with those individuals who are relying on you to provide that information by giving them timely and accurate data. Furthermore, audits can be challenging within an organization, and by having a set of really more or less either expertise consultants, like working with someone like Dave, or having a tool like we're going to be walking you through, will help you work through that process with your business or your other stakeholders, while hopefully avoiding as much as possible any disruption or any sense of criticality. So when we look at our solution here, we've got a variety of different lenses, really two, I should say, lenses we can look at this. We have an add-on. It's called Audit and Security Manager for Dynamics 365 Finance and Supply Chain Management. Now, its main purpose, and we've had different versions of this since like 2007, 2008, back all the way in the days of AX4. Primarily the purpose of it is to bridge gaps in capability around generating reports or security management sort of activities that have been long-standing. And some of its benefits are going to be listed there, and we'll talk about it a little bit more. But just so you know, for our existing customers, we do have a discounted offering. It is an annual subscription. It can be implemented in as little as 4 weeks from signature to within production environment. Of course, that's going to depend on your own release cadence, but that is something that we have seen very quickly deployed depending on need. And there's going to be a whole list of features that we're going to be working through. So we won't go spend a ton of time on that at the bottom, but I will spend a quick minute on some of the benefits we've been able to find by reviewing existing customers. So when it comes to deploying a net new or updated security model, we've seen a significant reduction in time spent. Typically, when it comes to both developing more custom security and or aligning business process to out-of-box security. And that both plays into the deployment and ongoing security management activities. Furthermore, working with segregation of duties and access controls, both making sure that and as Dave is going to get into, that we're complete and accurate and that we're going beyond the out-of-the-box capabilities has really helped drive efficiency around how we can best report accurately on segregation of duties and how we can report at all on individual access controls. Furthermore, because of this and because of our own security model, it's a module within D365, you can open up as needed, very discrete access levels so that there is a self-serve component for someone, let's say within a business unit or within an auditing firm and an auditing group. And then lastly, probably the key point here that we like to stress the most is that actually, when it comes to your audit and audit preparation and just security reporting, like let's say for user access reviews, the amount of time that can be saved is quite significant, because this is more or less going to be, at least from an access review perspective, a quarterly potentially topic, if not semi-annually. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and hand this on over to Dave. So these are a couple other things that he will be going ahead and talking about as we get into our features. So Dave, I'll hand this over to you.
Awesome. Thanks for kicking us off, Corey. So while our ASM features and capabilities are largely related to each other, we do tend to break them up into three distinct areas. The first one that you're seeing here on the screen is security and user management. These are the tools and reports that are meant to support IT personnel like business analysts, system administrators, anyone who is responsible for the management of the users and security configuration in your system, and who may also be responsible for handing off data in relation to audit and whatnot, or access reviews for managers. So that's the first area. Second area, segregation of duties and sensitive access reporting. This is where we get into identifying who has functionally significant access in the system, and where access may open the organization up to risk, and where access may potentially be over-provisioned. And then the final feature area is tracking and audit trail. These are our detective features that allow you to understand what may be happening in your system that may be of concern or may be worth keeping track of. So the two core features here are user activity monitoring, which is where we trace the things that people do. And then, of course, we have data monitoring, which tracks changes to data in the system. So with that overview, we're going to jump into the environment here. I'm going to share my screen. Hopefully you guys can see it. Corey or Cheryl, can you guys see my screen? All right, great. Okay, as Corey mentioned, one of the overview slides, Audit Security Manager is completely embedded within D365. We have no external database, no integrations or anything like that. We install the product and everything is housed within your environment. It can all be found within a single module here. We open up the hamburger icon here on the left. We see Audit Security Manager, and here is our product. Okay. So the first area that we're going to look at today is the security management. We'll go ahead and open that up here and look at temporary user role assignments. So as the name suggests, this feature allows us to assign roles to users for temporary periods of time. A couple main use cases for a feature like this. Of course, if someone's going on vacation and you need another resource to backfill for that person on vacation, this feature will allow you to assign roles to that person backfilling for a fixed period of time. And then other main use case that we see for this type of feature is, of course, when someone needs elevated access in production for maybe helping out with a data issue or anything of that nature. So the setup for this is quite straightforward. First, we'll select the user who's going to be doing the backfilling or who's going to be getting the roles temporarily assigned. And I will select Alicia here, and then we just click the Assign Roles button. At this point, we have two options. We can either pick the role that we want to assign, or roles that we want to assign to Alicia a la carte from the role list, or we can select the user, if there is a user that she's backfilling for, and assign them that way. So I'll click Arnie here, and now that role list is filtered to the roles that Arnie has. And I will then set the validity date for the assignment, and we'll say that Alicia's going on a nice 2-week vacation in August. Or sorry, Arnie's vacation. We'll put that in here as the reason for the role assignment. Go ahead and click OK. Oh, and we're actually seeing one of our segregation of duties preventative features here in action. So in this case, we could not perform the role assignments because we are violating a segregation of duty rule. So that is one of the ASM features, which we're seeing just a little bit early here. But I'll go ahead and just pick a role here for the sake of example. Go ahead and do that. Viewing data, click OK. And now we can see the role assignments posted here. So we grabbed the first one from that initial assignment because that was not in violation of the SOD rule, and then the one that I just set here. So what's going to happen now is on these dates that we have specified, Alicia is going to be assigned these roles. And then on the valid to dates, she is going to be automatically, or these roles will be automatically removed from her. This is occurring on a batch cadence. So you'll basically just set up a batch job when you configure this feature to determine when these roles are assigned or removed from the user. And then that way you're kind of removing that human error component of this process where someone may forget to assign the roles or remove the roles from the user. Now, of course, we want to keep track of these types of assignments, especially if your user and user role assignments are audited. And for that reason, we do have a log of all of these under here, temporary user role assignments. And this is the running list of all of our temporary assignments in the system. So if you need to provide a list of all these exception role assignments, so when folks get roles outside of the scope of maybe their normal assignments, we can easily do that here. Okay. And while we're on the topic of tracking users and role changes and all that good stuff, I would like to also showcase our user change log. The user change log is probably our most commonly utilized feature in D365 ASM. This log will track any meaningful change in terms of access that happens to a user. So when roles are assigned or removed, when users are imported or deleted from the system, when they're enabled or disabled, when we add or remove a legal entity designation for a user role assignment, anything that impacts a user's access is going to be automatically captured in this log here. So this is, again, like I said, one of the most commonly used features because pretty much every organization has a need to track this type or these type of events, right? If auditors ask you to prove that employees are terminated in a timely fashion or that users only had the roles that they're supposed to have for a given period of time, anything along those lines, we can provide that evidence with this log. Okay. And while we're talking about reports, I do want to just mention that we have quite a lot of reporting for security and user role assignments. I'm not going to open every single one of these in the interest of time, but you can kind of get an idea here from the list. We have detailed access reports at both the user and role level. We there, have that temporary role assignment log that we just looked at. We have one that reports on system administrator users, new and custom entry points brought into the system where we might have deny access, provisioned, and then of course, just a generic user role assignment, which I will also point out is integrated with the HR module. So that will pull in any position hierarchy information you have as well. Another key component of these inquiries and reports here is we also have them in SSRS report versions. The main benefit of that, of course, is that auditors or managers or whomever can actually receive this data directly from the system. We, of course, could export any of these inquiries to Excel here. That's a D365 feature, but a lot of times auditors don't like that. They like to receive data from the system that they can review with confidence and know that it was not tampered with or altered in any way. And we can do that by leveraging these audit reports, set their emails as the destination. We can also set these reports to run on batch recurrence. So, once a month, once a quarter on a specific day. We can configure them to have, the last 30 days or 90 days or 120 days, whatever, of information as well. We can get really creative with how we do these reports, but the key takeaway here is that we do have a method of delivering this data from ASM directly to auditors or any parties of interest without going through you first. Okay. Security management feature that we're going to look at today is our security simulator. Security simulator is one of the most useful tools and probably one of my favorite features in ASM when it comes to anyone who is actually physically managing the security roles themselves. Organizations, of course, are going to end up creating their own security framework over time, custom roles. When it comes to custom roles, there's not really a great way to test those roles and to make sure that they do what they're supposed to do. There's not a great way to troubleshoot any issues that you might have with those custom roles. Typically, what folks end up doing is provisioning a second account for whoever is managing the security, and then they can log in on a separate browser and assign the role to their test user there and test on multiple screens, which is a workaround, but it's increasingly difficult in this multi-factor authentication world that we live in, where we have either Duo or Microsoft Authenticator or whatever third-party application we have to manage our access. So with the security simulator, what we can do is actually test security roles directly within our environment as our named user. So to do this, the first thing we've got to do is open up our user record and assign a security role to ourselves. In this case, I've already got a role assigned to myself, the cost accountant clerk. And what I want to do now is simulate what type of access this role could have. Again, I could be doing this for troubleshooting. Maybe I just created this role and I want to test it out. Maybe a user is reporting an issue and I want to go check that it's actually a security issue. This kind of goes on and on, in terms of how we can use this tool. But I'll go ahead and just start it here by clicking that Start Security Simulator mode. And we have now refreshed our session. My system administrator access is gone, and now I'm seeing what someone with the cost accountant clerk role would see. I got very limited workspaces here. If I open up the menu or module list, you see I only have a couple, primarily the cost accounting module, and I'm seeing only what that cost accountant clerk sees. I can open up any of the forms here and see and do what a user with that role would do. In this case, I only have view access to parameters, probably expected. And I can really go through any process or troubleshooting steps or anything of that nature with this tool. Once I've completed my troubleshooting or testing, to go back to my system administrator access, I would just click this red X in the top right. That refreshes my session, and now I'm back with my administrator account. Okay. All right, so now we are going to pivot over to the sensitive access and segregation of duties area. So the first feature we're going to look at here are our access controls. Now, an Audit Security Manager, an access control is how we report on who has access to any functionally significant action or feature in the system. Anything like posting a journal, confirming a purchase order or a sales order, maintaining a vendor, maintaining a bank account, any of those things that you get audited on or, that are just business critical that you would like to know who can do, we can surface that information using our access controls. Now, as Corey mentioned in the introduction, our product, ASM, comes with pre-configured out-of-box rule sets. And that is what you are seeing here on the screen. This is a list of rules that are very broadly applicable to most organizations. And it's something that we've just curated over time, working with different customers in different industries and with different auditors like EY and Deloitte and whatnot. And it's more or less those rules that most organizations can leverage right off the bat. So the intention here is that we give you this list and you can review it and then enable what makes sense for your organization and kind of get a jump start on that control definition process. Now, of course, we can also create anything that you need custom. It's really straightforward process. We can do it just from the user interface. It's pretty simple. And at that point, we can run the checks. So I'm going to go ahead and open up one of these here. We'll do the create bank account. We got some generic setup criteria up here. We got a severity level, some IDs and categories here. The idea with these or with this setup criteria is that we can report and filter on controls based on, maybe functional area or severity or anything along those lines. But what we're really focused on is the objects down here. So with our access controls, we set them up at the root object level in D365. So for those who are not maybe familiar with the security architecture, we have our user at the top. Our user gets assigned roles. Roles are made up of duties, which are essentially business processes. Those business processes are made up of substeps or privileges. And then those privileges contain the actual interface objects that our users see and click and interact with. And that is where we are setting up our controls. So all the way down there at the root level. What that means is that when we run this check, because we're at the root level, we can be confident that this is a complete and accurate list of all the folks who can do, in this case, the creation of a bank account. Okay, so we'll identify that menu item or that object. In this case, it's the new button, just like this on the bank account. And then we'll set our access level. And for this, you either get that button or you don't. So we can just leave the access level at read. And then we will go ahead and click our check control button, click OK. And what it's doing now is it is looking at our users and all the roles that they have and seeing who can create a new bank account. All right, now that the check has completed, we can view the results. And in this case, we got 2 users in our system who can create a bank account. We got the user Oscar, who has the treasurer role. The treasurer role has the maintain bank accounts master duty. That contains the maintain bank accounts privilege. And that privilege is what houses that display menu item that we put on the last screen here, or on the previous screen. Okay, we also surface the access level that they have. So in this case, it's add, because we're creating a new record. And then we also will show the legal entities where this user has that access. By default in D365, users get access to all legal entities when a role is assigned, but you can restrict that to particular legal entities. And if that is the case, we will show that here. Okay, so the process that I just showed you here is the setup and the checking of a single access control. But I do want to point out that we have a periodic task for the access controls. It's a check control job here that will run this check for all of our enabled access controls. And then we can view all of those results in the same place here. Okay. Another question that maybe some of you have in your head after seeing that big list is, do we have a way to get rid of this data over time? The answer is yes. We are not going to just continually pile up data in your database. We do have an archive process whereby we can move the data into an archive table, which is what you see right here. And then we do have a way to offload that data from the system, as well as take a backup of it. And that backup can either be stored locally, or we can export it to BYODB or Data Lake or anything like that. You can also, of course, visualize this data in Power BI with that method. And this process of archiving the data, backing it up to BYODB or wherever, that is going to be the case for pretty much all of our data in here. Everything else that I'm going to show you as well, including the segregation of duties, which we're about to look at, as well as the data monitoring and user activity monitoring a little bit later. All right, so let's hop over to segregation of duties. So segregation of duties, of course, is when we want to mitigate risk of fraud and that type of thing. We'll set up a rule in our system where we don't want a single person playing too much of a role in a single process, right? So in this case, we have, again, a pre-configured rule set, which is available to you out of the box, and you can enable any of these straight away. And again, of course, we can also create any rules that you need custom. We can also do that with any ISVs or add-ons that you guys have as well, fully compatible with custom menu items. And that goes for all of our features. So I'll go ahead and open this create customer and maintain customer payment journal segregation of duty rule. So in this case, what this rule is saying is that we do not want person A to be able to both create a customer and maintain a customer payment journal. All right, that could open us up to some bad stuff. So the setup is pretty similar. We have a lot of the same setup categories and all that down here. We also have an area for a mitigation. If you do have a mitigation control, or sorry, a mitigating control for your SOD rules, you can put that here on the control level, and we'll see where that comes into play in a moment. But again, similar to the access controls, we are mostly concerned with the objects down here. So unlike the access controls, and with a segregation of duty rule, we're not just checking one thing, we're looking for where a user can do multiple things. So in SOD function 1 here, we are finding the objects for the first part of this SOD rule, the creating the customer. And then in SOD function 2, we are identifying the objects for the second part of the rule, the maintaining of the customer payment journal. So when we run the check here, what it's going to do is it's not going to look for folks who can do either of these things, create a customer or maintain a payment journal. It's going to look for folks who can do both of these things, and that is where our conflicts lie. So we'll go ahead and click check rule. Click OK, and it has been executed, and we can view the conflicts here. And this is our list of all the users in the system who can, or who are in violation of this rule, where they can both create a customer and maintain customer payment journal. So we'll take the first line up here. We have the user Arnie. Arnie has the collections agent role, which has the ability to create a customer. He has the accounts receivable payments clerk, which has the ability to maintain the payment journal. And right there, that's our conflict. So he can, by way of the collections agent and the accounts receivable payments clerk role, he's in violation of our rule. Now, if we needed to take some type of remediating action, that we kind of have all the information we need right here. We can either remove one of these roles from Arnie, or we could, remove one of the components or menu items from these roles. We could take the create customer piece away from the collections agent, or we could take the payment journal away from the AR payment clerk role. Okay, so that obviously is that remediating action is going to be totally dependent on the organization, but you do have the information right to make that decision. Now, scrolling over here to the right, we have a few important fields. So we have the violation found, date and time. This is going to be the original date and time that this violation was found. So this is a timestamp that's never going to change from when it's first generated, okay? We will show who ran that check, and then we will show the status over here, whether that conflict is active or not. Okay, and if you look down here at the record below it, you're going to see a status of not active. So what that's saying for this record, the user Oscar, is that Oscar was found to be in violation of this rule yesterday, but it's no longer active. And we can see a different timestamp over here of 2 hours later in the day. So putting that all together, what this tells us, or what it would tell our auditors, is that we have found a segregation of duty conflict at this point in time. It's no longer active because we took action at a later point in time to remediate this conflict. So you basically have a way to show your auditors that you're proactively surfacing your SOD conflicts and risks and all that, but also that you're doing something about it. Okay. And like I mentioned on the previous screen, we had that mitigation field. those mitigations are going to show up in line with all of your conflicts here. The reason I'm pointing this out is because a lot of times there are going to be SOD conflicts that you just have to live with. Maybe you're a small organization, or some responsibilities have shifted around after someone's departure, and you have to live with the conflict, but you can implement a control to mitigate the risk around it, like a workflow. So in that case, you can enter the details of the mitigation on that previous screen, on the setup screen, and then view that mitigation in line here with your conflicts. And the benefit to that is when your auditors are reviewing this data, they'll see the conflict, but then they'll also see that, oh, they got a workflow on this control. So this, access really is not a big deal because it gets approved 5 times, right? Okay. And again, just like with the access controls, what I've shown you here is the process for running a check on a single individual SOD rule, but we can also do this for all of our enabled rules with a periodic task, and then view all that data in a single log. All right, so now we are going to move on to our final functional area, the change tracking and audit trail. So the first feature that we're going to talk about is the user activity monitoring. So user activity monitoring is one of our newer features, and I say that because it's been around for a couple of years now, but ASM has been it's one of our more mature IP. Like Corey was saying, we've had a few versions of it, but this was really born out of a high demand from our customers to have some level of accountability over our system administrator users. Now, as all of you are probably aware, in D365, a system administrator can do pretty much anything they want. And there's not a whole lot of accountability that you can have over them outside of external controls and reviews and things of that nature. So what we did was we created user activity monitoring to provide some level of accountability over those system administrator users. So to set this up, all we got to do is basically just turn it on. There's a toggle. And what it will do is it will then track all of the actions that our users with the system administrator role take in the system. Okay. You can kind of see that here, that the user Dave went to parameters, ASM parameters, and he clicked edit on the record ASM parameters. He opened the form ASM parameters. You can even see up here that I went to all vendors. I opened the vendors form. I then went to the bank account from the vendor. I opened the vendor bank account form. I clicked edit on the vendor bank account. I clicked save on the vendor bank account. So, again, it's kind of like a breadcrumb trail. We're not seeing the exact detail of what I changed on those vendors, but we are seeing that I did, in fact, open a vendor form and make some kind of change and save it. So this is kind of the type of review that you would do with this log. So we're going to have this running list of all the actions that our system admin are doing. And then this can be reviewed by, a manager or someone in the business to make sure that the functionality that the system admins are interacting with is actually in scope of their responsibilities. So if we see some stuff related to ASM parameters and user activity monitoring log and SOD, that's probably all good. But when we start seeing stuff like this, that they're going into vendor bank accounts and saving things, that's probably a red flag, right? And if vendor bank accounts or vendors are sensitive information for our organization, then we are going to want to look deeper into this to see exactly what was changed. Okay, so that takes us to our next feature, which is data monitoring. So kind of playing off of that scenario where we have some changes to vendor bank accounts or vendors, in theory, we would have data monitoring set up on those tables, and we can go then view the changes that were made. All right, so here's our data monitoring log. And with that same timestamp, we can now see changes to the vendor bank accounts. So we'll take this first row here, for example, or the second row from the bottom. We have the Same timestamp of May 24th. We have the user Dave, again, who made the change. We see that he updated the vendor bank account table, specifically the bank account number field, as well as the routing number below it. That change type was an update. So we modified an existing record in the USMF legal entity, and we can see the new value and then the previous value, what that value was before. So putting this all together, the user activity monitoring log and the data monitoring log are features that can be used in tandem, right? We can track the things that folks are doing with the user activity monitoring log. And then for anything that folks, maybe change that are sensitive, we can then dig into the detail here in the data monitoring log. Now, of course, you don't have to use the user activity monitoring log to use the data monitoring log. We can set this up on pretty much any tables and fields you want in the system. And that is actually one of the differentiating characteristics of our data monitoring log versus the out-of-box data monitoring, database logging feature. For those who don't know, Microsoft does have database logging. It goes by that name in the system, but a lot of organizations opt to not enable it because it's known to impact performance and downgrade user experience. And for that reason, organizations either need to be very meticulous about what they turn on, or they just don't turn it on at all. So that is, basically why we have our own version of this, because so many organizations have this need to track data, but they can't turn it on because they don't want to impact their system performance. We created our own version. The approach that we took was a little more SQL centric. So at a really high technical level, what we do is we place SQL triggers on the tables that we want to track. And this is very, very, very minimal from a performance impact perspective. And what it allows us to do is basically track changes to any tables that we want without having a noticeable performance impact. Okay, so not only can we use the data monitoring to the extent that we would like, but we can also track even transactional tables without downgrading performance. Okay, another one of the differentiating features here of our data monitoring log is that because we took this SQL-centric approach, we can also surface related and parent record information directly into our data monitoring log. So what that means is we have 4 columns over here. On the right, we have a type, a num, a name, and a legal entity. So going back to our vendor bank account example, if we saw that someone changed a bank account number and a routing number, from X to Y, that's great. That's good to know. But if we don't know who the respective vendor is, this information is not super helpful, right? You'd have to, maybe grab the rec ID and do some lookups, and you could probably get that information, but it would be, a little time consuming and not convenient. So with our feature, with the ASM data monitoring, like I said, we can write those SQL scripts on our tables that we're tracking and then pull that information directly into the log here. So in the type, obviously, in this case for a vendor bank account, it's going to be for a vendor. But we also pull in the vendor's ID and that vendor's name, as well as that vendor's legal entity. So there's a valuable, context to the change that's made, and it's right here in the log, and we can just view it without having to do any extra work. Similarly, if we scroll up here, we can see some address changes that we might want to track. But in D365, addresses can belong to all sorts of different party records: customers, vendors, workers, employees, contractors, prospects. I'm probably thinking of or forgetting a few different ones, but that type really comes into play here. We can surface the addresses for a customer in this case, and then provide that customer's ID, that customer's name, and that customer's legal entity directly here in the log. So takeaway here is that, we can provide insights to the data that you're tracking directly in the log, requiring no extra effort on your part to investigate, what that data might pertain to. Another thing I want to mention on the data monitoring is that, like our access controls and segregation of duties, we do have the ability, we do provide an out-of-box data set. So we do have data monitoring controls pre-configured for things like vendor data, customer data, sales orders, main accounts, purchase orders, items, all the big like master data and even some transactional data. We do have that box, but again, we also configure any data monitoring that you might need, and that is or holds true, I guess, for custom tables that you might have as well. We can also track changes to those. Okay, and then one last thing I'll just reiterate on data monitoring and user activity monitoring is that we do have that same archive process in place. That is a little more pertinent with data monitoring and user activity monitoring, where we're constantly generating data, so we can automate that whole process and even the export as well. Okay. And the final feature that I'm going to review with you in this webinar here is some of our license reporting. Now, what you're seeing here is a little sneak peek of some of our revamped license reporting in ASM. I'm going to go ahead and just filter for one role here for the sake of example. All right. So as some of you may or may not be aware, Microsoft has recently transitioned all of the license reporting into the Power Platform Admin Center. In the Power Platform Admin Center, you are able to see all of your license counts and get some insights into your consumption and understand, how many licenses you purchased versus, how many you actually need, and so on and so forth. So what we have done here is we have basically done the drill down information into the license consumption. So the Power Platform Admin Center is going to give you the insights into, what roles you have or what roles your users have that are causing you to have these licenses. And now with our reports, we can actually dig into why those roles have the licenses that they do. So in this case, I have filtered to the accounting manager role, and I have filtered to the objects that make this role a finance license. So this is important because, oftentimes when you're reviewing licensing, you're doing it because you want to reduce the number of licenses and thereby reduce your licensing costs, right? But it's hard to know where to start, right? You know that a role requires a finance license, but you don't know why, and you don't know how you would make it require, a lesser role like an activity or a team member. So with our reports here, you can slice and dice all the security information and really pinpoint why your roles have the licenses that they do. And then that will give you the information that you would need to, modify your roles or even your user role assignments and reduce the license counts. Okay, we do have versions of this license reporting in our existing version at the moment, but what I'm showing you here is going to be rolled out very soon, and it's got some new bells and whistles. All right, so we will hop back over to the PowerPoint now and talk a little bit about some of our related services. Now, of course, we sell ASM as a product. We'll implement it, train you guys on how to use it, and you can be off to the races. But we do provide some services that complement our product offering. First that I'll mention from the bottom is the license analysis and reduction. So that is going to be heavily related to what I just talked about here, where we analyze your license consumption, help you understand why you're consuming the licenses that you are, and then we can also do the work of reducing those counts for you. Basically modifying your roles to require lower license levels, but also working with the business from a process perspective and change management perspective, because that is often required when we do, change access. Next one, audit and compliance services. So we will also provide services to help you through your audit preparation periods. So aggregating the data that you need, configuring controls, configuring segregation of duty rules, generating the data in the way that your auditors want to see. Basically, we'll help you get through the finish line of your audit. And then finally, security role configuration. We will come in and completely redesign your security makeup if you wish, or we can help you understand, make sense of your security configuration, provide training so that you can also do that type of work. Okay, so with that said, I think we have time for some Q&A.
Indeed, we do. I have a couple questions here. Thank you, Dave, by the way. So I think you've answered some of them. So first off is, does this work with customizations and ISVs? And yeah, that's correct. Yeah.
Yes.
So either, yeah, you want to take that one, Dave?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, our product is fully compatible with any ISVs. We can report on custom menu items, custom tables, anything custom.
Thank you. And ISVs as well. And then what's the difference between the out-of-the-box SOD and our SOD?
Great question. Yeah, so the out-of-box segregation of duty framework actually checks for conflicts at the duty level. So which sounds right, but it's actually wrong from a security architecture perspective. So like I mentioned in the demo, the security object hierarchy starts at the user, goes down to the role, then the duty, then the privilege, and then the menu item or AOT object. So we actually have two levels below the security duty. So if we're checking rules at the duty level, then we're not detecting any changes below that. We're not detecting changes to privileges, changes to menu items, changes to menu item access. So really the checks at the duty level are not complete and accurate. Whereas with our version of segregation of duties, we are setting those rules up as you saw at the menu item or object level. So we can rest assured that they are that those checks are complete and accurate.
Thank you, Dave. I'm going to go ahead. We have a question about pricing. So we have this is our pricing, so timeline and cost here. So as Dave mentioned, it's a product. Basically, that means that this is something that we maintain and support for the term of our agreement. So if Microsoft releases updates or anything like that, we are committed to maintaining that solution and its capabilities through Microsoft's update cadence as they happen to come out. So basically, we do our own test and validation of these capabilities. We provide you a new package if we need to, but usually that's pretty rare. And our discounted offering for our existing customers here is a $15,000 per year. We do a 3-year subscription usually. And it can be implemented in as little as 4 weeks. Then we have another question about, is the software used for role configuration? And yeah, there are a couple capabilities used for role configuration. One of them is primarily on the analysis side of things. And so basically that means that you can compare roles, you can compare duties, you can compare privileges, you can better understand your security model so you can configure them. And then we also have an enhanced task recording capability so that you can leverage task recordings to more precisely configure based on the permissions you have existing in your Dynamics 365, whether they're out of the box or custom permissions, these could be privileges, duties, and roles, to meet the access as defined by that task recording. So we've extended that task recording for security diagnostics or security diagnostics for task recording capability even further. Those are our primary security role configuration capabilities. We do also advocate for leveraging the out-of-the-box configurator as well, as appropriate. And then Matt had a follow-up. So sorry, yeah. There are services associated with implementing our tool. It depends on the level of involvement from our side, and or the amount of handholding that we would need to provide, either on the technical side or on the training side. It can be quite limited in terms of hours. We've had some projects that we can deploy in like a couple dozen hours or even less, and then some customers where they need us to do services like interface with business and auditors, in which that would be a larger project as well. So yeah, depending on how you engage with us, it could be in the dozens of hours. And if you have a very capable technical team, it can be very hands-on, because we have a user guide, an installation guide, we deliver a deployable package, and it's all time and material. So if you just want to run with it, you can run with it and just reach out to us as needed. Okay, cool. I don't see any other questions at this point. Hopefully, correct, Matt. It is a time and material billed per hour as needed for implementation and support, plus that subscription. That subscription covers the software. We'll work on making that a little bit clearer in the slides as well. Good. I don't see any other questions. I just want to also repeat, thank you, Dave. Really appreciate you walking us through all of that. As you all probably noticed, we did not have a chance to get through every single capability here. But if you would like to know more about our solution, I'm sure don't have a point of contact, we'll give you an email address to reach out, so that we can go ahead and answer any other questions you may have. And that you can find right there. So if you do have any questions, you'd like to follow up and you're not sure who to contact, you can reach out to info@argano.com. If you know, or you're working with a client care or a support manager, or you have like an account executive, you can certainly reach out to them as well, and they'll be able to help you out. So thank you all. I appreciate the time. Again, thank you, Dave. And looking forward to seeing if there's some opportunity for you to streamline your audit and security management processes. Bye, everyone.